Meet Reed Lance Rosenthal, rancher, #1 best-selling award-winning author, and unabashedly, unapologetically on the right side of the outstanding issues of our generation. But don't try to fence him in. Sometimes his positions will surprise you, because Reed is definitely his own man, with his own opinions. You might love him, you might hate him, but you won't be able to stop listening. Step over to the right side with Reed.
Howdy, listeners and viewers, coast to coast, the Gulf to Canada, and around the globe. Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio, AM stations. And for you viewers, then Reed Lance Rosenthal, The Cowboys Take, on all sorts of platforms. We recommend, #1, Rumble. We recommend, or should we say we disrecommend, YouTube, for all the reasons we've discussed on previous shows. Google is not your friend. And they just lost a really big antitrust lawsuit. We might be able to get into that today, because it just couldn't happen to a better bunch of folks. Today we're going to talk about, this is going to be our 5th update on the attempt on Trump's life. And more stuff's coming out, and there's more stuff that's not coming out. You know, the weave and dodge, the obfuscate, the delay, which can only serve to bury the truth, is in full swing down there at the agencies, the FBI, the Secret Service, the Department of Justice, you name it. Well, we're going to dig into the bottom of a few of these things, because I'm not going to let this go. This was a concerted attempt to take the life of Donald Trump, and it was a attack on the Constitution, it was treason, and it was an act of overt violence, an undemocracy, you know, the threat to democracy, against all of us who are Americans who believe in the Constitution, faith, family, and freedom. So we're not going to let this go. Hopefully our Congress people will not let this go either. We shall see. We shall see. We're also going to talk about some international events, which obviously might shape all our destinies in the months and years to come. And we're going to talk kind of an economic rat-a-tat-tat. I think it's kind of apropos, since we saw the beginnings of the meltdown. The housing market is beginning to fall apart. The labor market is beginning to fall apart. Of course, we're being gaslighted all the way along the line. Everything is fine. Great economy, best on the planet. Don't you worry your pretty little American heads. We got this. Yeah, you got this all right. All right. And that economic rat-a-tat-tat, I'm going to be focusing pretty much on the housing market. Oh, yeah, there'll be some other stats. For you radio listeners, that's all I'm going to be able to get into the show. But if you want to go over to Rumble or Brighteon or Gab, or if you must, YouTube, then Reed Lance Rosenthal, The Cowboys Take, and you can listen to the rest of it there, because there'll be further rat-a-tat-tat on other economic subjects on the videos, where we have a little bit more leeway and time, and not such a tight 14-minute and 43-second segment schedule as we do on AM radio. First of all, let's start off with the founder's quote. Actually, before I do that, let's start off with the fact that everybody is focused on the presidential race, and well, you should be. I think Kamala Harris's pick is great for the Republicans. In a lot of ways, it's the worst pick she could have made. While it may solidify her base is the minority in this country, thank God. And it's going to, I think, move a lot of independent minds away from Kamala Harris. Not that they should have been there to begin with, because her record and what she says is atrocious. We'll be posting that on the website, on therightsideradio.com, on and on and on, up until the election. Kamala Harris and now her running mate, the governor of Minnesota, in their own words. I mean, you don't need to say anything. You just need to listen to them and you'll get the picture. But what a lot of people are not focusing on so much is the House and the Senate. Never mind your local races, your state legislature, where really your first line of defense is. We've talked about that in the past. Get involved, folks. With 90 days, less than 90 days now, when many of you listen to this show or watch it. So let me throw out a few thoughts for you, okay? The Senate. Now, we know the WHO is the champion of globalism, the champion of authoritarianism, totalitarianism, rather incompetent when it comes to health, because that's not their mission, right? Their mission is something entirely different than health. Health is just the leverage they use to accomplish it. And we know the UN is not our friend. Did you know that the UN finally admitted, after badgering of over a year, that their staff, now listen to this, their staff was involved in the October 7th terror attack on Israel. UN staff was involved in that terror attack. The UN is not our friend. Why we fund them is beyond me. Okay, the WHO is not our friend. Why we fund them is beyond me. But any treaties, under the Constitution, any treaties which are done, like the WHO Pandemic Control Authority, that treaty that they've been working on feverishly at the behest of the WEF and the rest of the globalists, the UN Small Arms Treaty, the UN Health Treaty, I could go on and on down the list, folks. The Paris Accords, climate change stuff. The Senate has to ratify a treaty, and you need 51 senators to kill it or ratify it. Think about that. Get involved in the Senate races. On the Take Action page on the rightsideradio.com, just click Take Action and you will see a whole bunch of people you can contribute to. There's several great kind of sites. There's multipliers where you're putting in $10 and it's worth 50 or it's worth 100. I mean, it's a lot of bang for your buck. There's aggregated emails where basically you click on the email and the 8 conservative senators which have banded together, you can give $10 or $20 or whatever works for you to each of them. The same with Congress. This is critical. Congress controls the purse, right? The House of Representatives controls the money. If you can control the agreements that are made with other countries via the Senate, not to mention judiciary, the judges selection, right? The hearings on judges. By the way, we posted a few of those for you, and you can see exactly the caliber, the quality, the ideological, the rabid ideological bent of the judges, which the cadaver administration, Obama's third term, has nominated to the bench. It will make you retch. So the Senate is key to the judiciary, which is key, as we have found out over the last 4 years, toward keeping our freedoms and upholding the Constitution. The Senate is key to treaties, which are critical. Some of the treaties I just rattled off, they will affect your day-to-day life. They will affect your liberties, your freedoms, and your property. And, by the way, your health. I mean, absolutely critical. And the House has the purse strings. They can cut off the money. For instance, this slow walk of the Trump conspiracy, not the attempted assassination, it's the Trump conspiracy. This slow walk by the Secret Service, the DOJ, and the FBI, you have a great lever there in Congress. Stop funding them. Let them all go home without pay. I bet you there's an investigation. I bet they get it done really quickly. But folks, for that to happen, you need a majority of conservatives, of Americans, of constitutional-oriented people in the House, and the same in the Senate. Get involved, send some money, go to the Take Action page, get involved in the campaigns in your state, and do something. This is up to us. There's nobody else. And let me tell you, if this election doesn't go our way, on a whole bunch of levels, the House, the Senate, the presidential, at the state levels, the governors, we're in for a really, 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 really ugly next few years. Really ugly. All right. Did you know, by the way, just to give you an idea what totalitarian governments, socialist governments do, and Connie Harris and her buddy, now Waltz from Minnesota, who actually said that one person's socialism is another person's good neighborliness. Really, no kidding. Okay. So in Mexico, they elected a leftist government, or actually, she kind of won by default, because what you may not know is that there were 27 assassinations of would-be Mexican presidential candidates who, shall we say, just didn't get along with the cartels as well as the person who got elected. So she kind of won by default because all her competitors were more or less scrubbed out. And somehow it bears an eerie feeling to what I have right now for the United States after the attempt on Trump, which is why I'm focused on it. And did you know that one of her first acts after taking office here over the last several months was to more or less nationalize all the gold and silver mines in Mexico? Now, number one, who do you think is going to get all that gold and silver? Can you spell China? China. And number two, did you know Mexico was the largest producer of silver on the planet? The largest. So think about what that's going to do to silver supplies, which is so key for the Green New Deal, and for the defense industry, which may explain why its price is being pushed down by the major banks who hold huge short positions. That's a whole story for another day. I mean, that just gets into corruption. Today, we're really talking about treason. So, look, the one good thing about America is that America, at least at this point, has enough people who respect and understand the Constitution, liberty, justice, the pursuit of happiness, equality in terms of equality of opportunity, not in terms of equality of handouts or outcomes. And over the last 60 months, this is now the 60th month that 1 million a month gun licenses, wrong term, that gun background checks have been performed for people buying firearms in the United States. 1 million a month. This is the 60th month of 1 million a month. Okay. Kamala Harris, of course, wants to make confiscation mandatory, although the government will write you a check because, the government has lots of money. And somehow I think there's, with 150 or 175 million armed Americans, probably not a good idea. Really not a good idea. But they don't care about good ideas, and they don't care about the law, and they certainly don't care about the Constitution, that pesky document which limits the rights of the federal government and empowers the states and the people. Pesky document is that. All right, look, let's start off with, if you will, our founder's quote, shall we? And the whole thing, everything that I just said comes down to information. It comes down to you being informed. I mean, not just this is what Joe said, and this is what Sally said, and this is what Tom. You need to be informed. And if you're not informed, then you can't take action. You can't understand the situation. You can't take the steps necessary to protect yourself, your family, your property, the Constitution, and the country. Benjamin Franklin, one of my favorites, he hits that whole thought right on the button. Quote, "A nation of well-informed men who have been taught to know and prize the rights which God has given them cannot be enslaved. It is in the region of ignorance that tyranny begins." Unquote. Amen. So try not to be in the legions of the ignorant, folks. You owe far more to yourself, your family, and your country. Far more. Now let me give you the ranch story this week. It's quite the story. So we just started our second cutting, and the hay is beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely terrific. Grass alfalfa mix. The bales are really nice and tight. We're using that from that story a few weeks ago. We're using that new baler since the old one had this ignominious death out on the field. And we have a guy who's buying most of the second cutting. Well, he shows up, in fact, this morning to get his first load of hay. And very nice guy, from about an hour in one direction from us. And he has a trailer, which I'm not sure would haul an ATV, much less, 5 tons of hay at a time. So we scrambled around. We figured out how to load this thing, which was woefully inadequate. And once we get it loaded and bales are kind of stacked on top of one another, I mean, it's quite the scene. We'll probably post a few pictures for you. He brings out his straps because you got to strap these bales down. Otherwise, bad things happen when you're on the highway, particularly to the cars behind you. And his straps were too short. And a lot of his straps were like towing straps. In other words, they didn't have buckle ends, which you can fit into the frame of a trailer and such, and then winch it down with the with the ratchet. Instead, they had tow straps type, the hooks that kind of go from one car to another when you're pulling somebody out of a ditch. Anyway, to make a long story short, although he was woefully unprepared, we managed to get everything loaded. We managed to use the straps that he had and kind of doubled them up just to be sure. And off he went down the road with our admonition to please bring the right straps and maybe even think about renting a larger trailer for the next go. And the guy was very nice. Couldn't have been nicer. Pleasure to have him as a customer, a new customer, in fact. But the moral of this story is, and I've said this before, PPP, prior planning prevents poor performance. Do not go out with the tools, and I don't care if you're in the military, or you're on a ranch, or you are going to the corner store in the suburbs, or sauntering down to the local bar and grill there in the big city. Do not venture forth unprepared for what may occur, and certainly not for what you know is going to occur, because it's going to waste a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money, and in some cases can result in, should we say, materially adverse consequences to your well-being. So that is the ranch story for today. I think there'll be some pictures posted so you can kind of grin with me as I recount it. Let's talk about the conspiracy on Trump's life, which obviously it is and was. So the agencies are slow walking their investigation. One really interesting thing we have on the website, on the rightsideradio.com, upper right-hand corner, the attempt on Trump. Hit that link. We have a whole page, beautifully organized, probably 100 different sources now, probably 200 articles and videos. You can look at it. You can make your own decisions. We have all the viewpoints kind of encapsulated in this backup that exists on the website to what I'm telling you, because I'm just giving you the broad brush. So number one, we're not the only ones who think it was a conspiracy. There's lots of people out there, including, by the way, Eric Trump, Trump's son. And he's come out publicly now. So I'd say that's kind of, somehow I think he probably talks to his father and probably gets some ideas from him. So I think that the Trump camp thinking this was a conspiracy to kill him is kind of a major thing. We'll see how that plays out. There's an interview on the website, and it's under the plot and the cover-up, that section of the Trump attempt page, of Eric Prince. Okay, he's the head of the Blackwater Group, probably the foremost, shall we say, off-the-record security forces on the planet. I mean, they are probably the world's largest security contractors. They're hired by government for combat missions, personal protective services, all, you name it. And this guy is one smart dude, and he knows what's going on. And one of the things that came out of this interview, you should listen to the whole thing because it's fascinating, is that Jill Biden, who is, coincidentally, having an event in Pennsylvania the same day as the attempt on Trump, she had 12 sniper teams with her. Trump had 4 sniper teams with him. The other thing that came out from that interview, Roe, right? He was the acting director in charge, as I told you, of protective services. I wonder why Mayorkas promoted him to take Cheadle's place. He was the one who personally disapproved Trump's team's requests for additional manpower, additional sniper teams, and additional technical assets. Him. Okay? So basically, he lied directly or indirectly to Congress. This has come out, by the way, through a whistleblower within the Secret Service that wrote a lengthy letter with great detail to Senator Josh Hawley, who, by the way, rocks. He's a guy you want to make sure gets reelected. We also find out now, how convenient, there are no records. The Secret Service kept no records of any communications that day of any nature, including within the service itself, right? No records. Not only that, it appears that they didn't keep the records, or they wiped the records of all texts, all communications over any channel source, encrypted or otherwise, and any emails related to that day. We also find out that they did the same thing on January 7th, 2021. And what was that? Oh, that was the day after January 6th. Very interesting, isn't it? I mean, you wipe the communication. It's kind of a Hillary technique. I wonder if they use BleachBit too. So, one of the things this whistleblower said is that after J6, the Secret Service actually called all their staff and said, submit your phones because we're getting you a new phone, or whatever excuse they had. And when they got their phones back, they found out that all communications after January 6th related to January 6th were wiped. They were gone. Think about that for just a minute. Think about that for just a minute. All right, so we don't have the communications between Secret Service, the sniper teams, the folks who were protecting Trump on the stage, his personal detail, whatever. We don't even have the operational plan yet. It's been a month, right? We don't have the operational plan from that day, or the names of who signed off on it, who wrote it. This is, listen, here's a word to Congress and to the Senate. It's great that you interviewed Ray, who, does nothing but dance on the head of the pin of truth, falling off often. It's great that you interviewed Paul Abbott, although the most interesting thing he brought up, as I told you last week, is that the FBI has settled a lawsuit and they're going to pay Peter Strzok $1.2 million and Lisa Page $800,000. Wow, unbelievable. And other than that, and then tried to mislead us on the political affiliation and the fact that the FBI they hadn't found any social media accounts until he was caught by one of the senators and the chairman of Gab Social, where this kid had posted all sorts of anti-Republican, anti-conservative, anti-Trump, et cetera, garbage. I mean, it's quite remarkable. But Mr. Abbott, in addition to those, shall we say, mistruths, right? Under oath, of course. Isn't the FBI the ones who prosecuted General Flynn for the setup they did with him, for lying to FBI agents? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. But the Inspector General of the Secret Service, of the Department of Homeland Security, actually, his name is Joseph Cuffari, Cuffari. And by the way, DHS and Mayorkas, they do not like this guy. He's really a bulldog. And he is not scared about showing what is going wrong, what is going right, and what is reprehensible. And he's in the middle of this now. Well, the Inspector General has found out just in the beginnings of his investigation. There's like 3 investigations going on. Secret Service is hush-hush and FBI is hush-hush, but the Inspector General, not so much. He found out that Cheadle and Rowe, though they had threat information prior to July 13th, the attempt on Trump, did not share it with their field staff. Not only that, the threat information of the day and prior to the day was not shared by the agents in charge at the Secret Service with the field staff who was protecting Trump. In fact, it appears that the personal detail of Trump, the folks who clustered around him after the shots, kudos to them, they were not informed of the threat, including a guy lying on the roof with a rifle, 140 yards away with a clear line of sight. So I guess you could say that there was a communication breakdown, but I think that we all know instinctively that it's far more than that. It's far more than that. So April 6th, the Inspector General, who had done a preliminary study on the workings of the Secret Service, the stuff I just gave you is kind of new stuff, he did 6 recommendations, written recommendations for the Secret Service. Number 1 was communications. Get everybody on the same channel. I'm making it simple. Number 2, inadequate threat notification, both in the field and from, we'll call it the main honchos to the field. And number 3, I'm only giving you 3 of the 6, the tremendous amount of time it takes to relay any of that kind of information, which does get passed on. None of this was corrected prior to the Trump fiasco, or should I say the Trump conspiracy. Question is, incompetence or intentional? You know what I think. Protective intel, this was another thing that the Inspector General brought up in his April 6th report, and he specifically singled out Rowe, R-O-W-E, Rowe, who's now the acting director of Secret Service appointed by Mayorkas, of course. But Rowe failed to incorporate known threats into protective plans and to share the details with the personal protective squad, so to speak, which is assigned to every VIP protectee that they're trying to save the life of. So there you go. Rowe, when questioned about this week, you really have to think about this. He said he's thought about it a lot, and what this all boils down to, folks, so don't you worry your sweet little heads about it, because we got this, is a failure of imagination. Let's quote, a failure of imagination, unquote. Now, one could wonder, it was the imagination because the attempt failed and they didn't imagine all the things that could go wrong with the plan? Or was it imagination because they wanted to protect Trump and they just didn't think about how a 20-year-old could get on a roof 150 yards away and undetected and wing off X amount of shots? We've talked about how many he may have shot, didn't shoot, shells. That's in my previous shows. If you haven't listened or watched, please do so. And once again, all the backup on the rightsideradio.com. Click on the Trump attempt link. It's all right there for you. We also find out that the Social Security, that's a Freudian slip. The Secret Service. Do you remember when cocaine was found at the White House and there was a big uproar, but they couldn't prove it because there was no evidence? Well, it seems that an agent, this is another whistleblower now coming to Congress. It seems that an agent, a special agent of Secret Service, in fact found the bag of cocaine and wanted to do their standard protocol investigation. And it's Miss Cheadle who specifically told them to lose the evidence. And she had the evidence destroyed, apparently with Rowe's knowledge, the guy who's currently in charge of the Secret Service. So there's no politics or ideology at the Secret Service, folks. They would never, ever even think of directly or indirectly participating in a plot or participating in the failure to prevent a plot against a political adversary. That wouldn't happen ever, ever, ever. Don't you worry about it. So there was no investigation of the cocaine. we all know the story of the cocaine. I mean, it's obviously Hunter. And who knows what pressure was brought on Cheadle by Jill Biden, who got Cheadle appointed to the position. That's neither here nor there. We have bigger fish to fry. And then we find out that the FBI lied under oath, Mr. Abbott. Okay? He lied about the social media presence of this kid. He lied about the ideological bent of this kid. And once again, they're dwelling on this kid because that makes you not dwell elsewhere, shall we say. And it's obviously that the slow walking, that it's under investigation, so we can't talk about it. Nonsense, by the way, nonsense. All that crap is designed to get this pushed away, buried, lost under this avalanche of news with cadavers stepping out, Obama stepping in to run the campaign, Kamala Harris suddenly the coronated queen of the Democratic Party, her choice of a communist VP, okay, Waltz, which is exactly what he is, and a whole pile of other news, including international news. In other words, they just want to go away. This is their standard deal. They did it with Kennedy, which this was the dust-off replay of. They've done it with everything. They've done it with 9/11. They've done it with the Las Vegas shooting. I can go on down the list, folks. They've done it with the perpetrators of the Russian hoax and Hurricane Crossfire. In fact, they're paying two of the main folks involved in that, Page and Strzok, $2 million of our tax money, and I guarantee you, to keep their mouths shut about what really happened. I mean, I guarantee you. I guarantee there is an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, and perhaps a sealing of records, and who knows what else. We'll find out eventually. I'm sure Judicial Watch or one of those other organizations will get to the bottom of it. One of the really interesting things, when Abbott testified, he said, listen, we're investigating if this was like ideological or if this was domestic terrorism. Do you remember when he said that? Once again, the whole grilling of Abbott and Rowe is on the website for you, on the Trump Attempt page, on the rightsideradio.com. Well, I have learned since then that the domestic terrorism thing, which I kind of thought was a little odd for him to say, I mean, it was really a choice, to put it in their terms, of assassination attempt or domestic terrorism. Abbott chose an assassination attempt or domestic terrorism. Do you know why he did that? Well, it seems that the protocol is, if it's domestic terrorism, they don't have to share information with us because, you know, it's a matter of national security, okay? A matter of national security. So that's how they're going to dodge and weave around that one. That was thrown out there simply to keep us in the dark. Oh yes, the dark. One last thing for you too. So the FBI has come up with a new acronym. It's called AGAVI. There's a fascinating interview of a former FBI agent on the website and on the Trump Attempt page on the rightsideradio.com. You might want to listen to it. There's a lot of insight in this interview about how the FBI operates and what motivates them. But AGAVI, folks, is a new kind of domestic terrorist definition. And it stands for, basically, anyone against government or authority, violent extremists. Okay? So if you don't like the government, you don't like authority, you don't like being mandated masks and 6-foot separations and jabs and, you know, what kind of car you can drive and all that stuff, sorry, you're a domestic terrorist. Yep. And they're watching you. And they are. They are. All right, let's do a little economic rat-a-tat-tat, shall we? And for those of you who don't hear the end of this on the radio show, please go to the video sites. Read Lance Rosenthal, The Cowboys Take, Rumble, Brighteon, Gab, if you must, YouTube. Please give me a subscribe, give me a like. It really helps. It really helps, and I really appreciate it. And thanks for all the great comments that have been coming in, too. Appreciate those. So, the government BS, right? The gaslighting. the world's greatest economy, the best on the planet. It's ripping, it's roaring. We're not going to have any recession at all. But if we do, it'll be a soft landing like a feather settling down on a bed of petunias. All right. Well, oh, and inflation's been tamed, it's done. So the basket of currencies, the basket of goods and services, here is the 3-year tally since 2021 when President Cadaver, Obama third term, and VP Harris took office. Durable goods, like washing machines and stoves and refrigerators and all that kind of stuff, furniture, up 10.9%. Food and energy, who needs those, right? By the way, this excludes gas and diesel, excludes it, 26.6%. Services, like your cell phone and your doctor's visits and all that kind of stuff, your attorney, whatever, 62% increase. Healthcare, off the chart, over 50% for a lot of procedures and services. Did you know that for housing, they don't look at the price of houses to determine inflation? They look at what an owner would pay to himself. I'm kind of simplifying this. If he rented the house from himself, I'm really not making this up. It's amazing. Yeah, it is amazing. Anyway, the 1998 changes that they made, wholesale changes to how they computed inflation, you're seeing them. You're seeing them in your wallet. You're seeing them at the store. You're seeing them on the shelves. And it doesn't matter how much they try and gaslight you, you know what's going on. Remember what Benjamin Franklin said: the informed shall rule the day, the uninformed shall lose their liberty. All right. So, after that little tidbit of good economic news, we have Blackstone, our friends at Blackstone, Mr. Fink and crew, and they're beginning to sell all those homes that they bought over the last 3 or 4 years, crowding you out of the market and driving up prices, and they're beginning to sell them at a loss. In fact, there's a bunch of sales. I have videos under the preparedness page, under the rat-a-tat-tat on the website. You should listen to them. These guys are experts. It's well worth the watch, well worth the listen, particularly if you're a homeowner or you're thinking of buying or selling. But Blackstone is selling at a loss, an average 10% loss. And they're actually marking down houses, lowering prices as fast as they can to unload their inventory. By the way, 10% of all single-family homes and multifamily homes, not rentals, are owned by investors, or actually owned by BlackRock types. BlackRock, Vanguard, I think it's Charles Street is another outfit, State Street, okay, 10%. Think about 10% of those houses coming on the market for people who don't care. They've gotten their money out of them, or they don't want to take any further losses, or they don't want to deal with the management, and now they're all getting dumped. What's that going to do to the price of your house? Do you think they care? Or maybe it's part of a plan to drive down the price of your house. Something worth thinking about. Did you know that 25% of all housing in the United States is investor owned? So that other 15% over the big boys is ma and pa. The person with a B&B, the person with a rental downtown, the person with a fourplex. That's ma and pa. And those are starting to go on the market, and those are starting to see price reductions. In 2024, the average home price, this is not adjusted for inflation, folks. You just add inflation to this to find the true nominal decrease in price. Decreased 4%. No, it didn't increase like the press is trying to tell you and the government's trying to gaslight you. It decreased 4%. There's been a 7% on the drop on the prices of new homes, the median price of new homes. And by the way, builders are paying anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000 in goodies to get people to buy, buying down rates, free appliances, extended warranties, you name it. The inventory of new homes is up 37% year to year, 37%. This is the highest increase in new home inventory in the last 20 years. And you know what happened 20 years ago, roughly 16 years ago? That's right, the great financial mess. And you know what happened to home prices then. The price of new homes has also dropped 7%. And in some places, 9%. 100,000 completed homes, that's new homes, are now sitting in inventory. In other words, they can't sell them. 100,000 homes. That's a lot of houses. They're buying down rates even to 5%. So all the people who told you, oh, when mortgage rates drop, home prices are going to skyrocket again, etc. Well, these builders are finding something different. They're buying down the rates to 5% and they can't move the houses. That's right. So they're decreasing the price, which does what to yours? You know what it does. 2011. Credit card delinquencies are now at the same rate as 2011. This is right at the tail end of the great financial collapse back there, 2008 to 2011. Default rates are now up over 4% on credit cards. They're higher, by the way, if you put in, buy later type plans. I talked to you about that last week. And overall consumer debt is up 6% over the last 2 months. 6%. I mean, that's staggering. Remember, consumer debt is in the trillions. Just multiply that out. FHA loans, right? Kind of the new subprime mortgage. Well, didn't work out last time, and it's not going to work out this time either, because default rates on FHA loans are now up to 11%. 1 out of 10 FHA dwelling units in the United States is in default. Wow. That's all I can say. Wow. So these are just some economic tidbits for you, particularly as it relates to housing. But housing is, the big cracks are starting to show. If you need to buy or you need to sell, buying you can probably delay. Sorry, sellers. Selling, if you're going to sell, you may be too late as it is, but you definitely don't want to miss any more cadence here, right? Daylight's wasting for you sellers. Daylight's wasting. By the way, on other economic news, I brought you, the host of store closings. I've given you websites you can go. You can track all the layoffs going on, all the store closings. This one astounded me. Did you know that Dunkin' Donuts, I mean, what? They're closing hundreds of stores. Hundreds. Now, when people can't afford a donut and a cup of coffee, folks, that's kind of a economic canary in the coal mine for the consumer, don't you think? Yeah, I think so. One more little economic tidbit on their economic rat-a-tat-tat / housing. Mortgage delinquencies jumped 13% over the last 2 months. The last time that happened was August, September of 2007. And we know what happened then and we know what happened after. So you homeowners or wannabe homeowners, govern yourselves accordingly. Now let's talk about election fraud. All sorts of things is bubbling to the surface everywhere. Everything that we knew happened with the 2020 elections, and to a lesser extent, but still with the 2022 midterms, is all coming out in the wash, and it ain't pretty. In fact, this is science. They're now proving this stuff. This is not, wishful thinking and all the stuff that went on and all the poo. And no, I'm not an election denier. I'm an election supporter. Why don't we say that I'm a fraud and treason, which is what it is, denier, okay? And you county clerks around the country, and you governors around the country, and you legislators around the country, you better wake up. These machines have to go. You have to go to paper ballots. In Fulton County, Georgia, there were 41,000 votes switched, or manufactured. They've proven it. They have it all tracked, step by step by step. And none other than the Georgia Elections Commission, that's right, the government itself, has now referred the case to the AG of Georgia with a request that he act on it within 30 days immediately emergency. So there you go, 41,000 votes. Remember, Trump supposedly lost Georgia by, I think it was 7,000 votes or 11,000 votes, right in that neighborhood. And this is just one county, folks, just one county. And the videos, the articles, and they are compelling. This is not hocus pocus. This is not everybody jumping up and down after 2020. You need to watch them, okay, on the rightsideradio.com, and they are under election fraud. They are under the audio bar. They are under rat-a-tat-tat, and they are where they belong under treason. Watch them, pass them out. You folks in Wyoming, if Chuck Gray is not watching or listening to this show, our Secretary of State, who's great, who's been thwarted at every attempt to try and get this problem fixed, both with illegal alien registration. We're going to talk about that in just a moment in Arizona. Wait to hear what's happening there, that they have now proven. Elon Musk tweeted it out, in fact. You need to keep doing it, Chuck. And the governor and the rhinos who run the Senate and the House need to get out of the way and get this done. And you county clerks in Wyoming and everywhere around the country, you need to get rid of those machines and you need to do paper ballots. It ain't hard. Losing the republic will be hard. Think about it. Balance them out there in your mental scale of justice, if you will. So anyway, in Georgia, 41,000 votes, one county in Georgia. As an interesting sidelight, if you multiply, there are about 3,600 counties in the United States. Now, obviously, not all of them are as populous as Fulton County, which is basically Atlanta. But just think about, I don't know, let's say there were 25,000 votes or 30,000 votes, average, switched by machines. And what the Georgia Election Board calls intentional human interference. That's treason. It's fraud. It's criminal. And when these people are caught, and they better be caught, and they're brought to justice, and they better be brought to justice, I don't think jail time will do it. This is treason, and they should get the maximum penalty mandated under law and under the Constitution. And then I think maybe this problem will go away. Let's talk about Arizona. So the document itself from the state of Arizona is on the website, along with articles, Elon Musk's tweet. It seems that the state law has a little hole in it, run by Democrats who won their election through fraud, of course. 17,000 votes. The babe that's in there now beat out Kerry Lake. And of course, Arizona went to, of course, Biden. But if you take all these counties around the country and you multiply out by 25,000 votes, average, what do you come up with? Oh, about 12 million votes. And what did Biden say? He got 85 million votes and Trump got 75 million votes. Biden got more votes than was ever cast for a presidential candidate ever. It's amazing how those numbers just kind of stack up. Because if you take that out, never mind all the other fraud that was going on, the Zuckerberg Dropbox frauds and all that stuff, never mind all that, you're at about 75 million Trump and 73 million Biden, which, as we all know, is about, give or take, where it was, if not higher, for Trump. But we got to make sure that doesn't happen in 2024. So in Arizona, the state law mandates, it's unbelievable, that you be a citizen of the United States to vote in Arizona. Okay, that's great. But it does not mandate, they say, the folks who are running the crooked elections down there in Maricopa County, Arizona, and have been for years, but they say it does not mandate that you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote in the federal elections. So they're busy sending out registration forms. I'm not making this up. To illegal aliens saying you can't register to vote in the Arizona election here in Arizona, but you can register here in Arizona to vote in the upcoming federal election. And here's how you register, and here are the forms. Isn't that just terrific? All right, Muslim fraud. Oh, I'm sorry, Kami Harris. We don't want to use those words, radical Islamic terrorist, anymore, do we? Oh, let's have the courage not to use them. Nonsense. Folks who are not citizens of this country, folks who have not assimilated into this country, when they act in contravention of the Constitution, it's treason, or worse, in their case. Muslim fraud in New York and Michigan. One town in Michigan in particular, it seems that the candidates are sitting around with their constituents filling out ballots at kitchen tables and dining room tables. The whole video, which was undercover by Project Veritas, the whole video is on the website. Once again, rat-a-tat-tat, election fraud, treason, and under the audio bar. So, this is small scale, local elections, for the mayor and the city council, etc. And supposedly the Department of Justice is investigating. Right. Don't hold your breath, folks. Don't hold your breath. And then, they had a pay-to-play deal in Michigan, right? And I'm sure it's going on elsewhere like Wisconsin, etc. And that is, they would fill out all these fake ballots, and then they would have what they call the midnight meeting and auction them off to candidates. Whoever paid the most got the most ballots. I am really not making this up. It's unbelievable. One good piece of news in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has ruled finally that the digital images created by these friggin' machines are public property and must be disclosed, right? This is what's happening down in Venezuela. Remember, I told you about it last week. I mean, it's pure election fraud. Maduro lost by 60%, but he said he won by 51%, but they don't want to give you the digital images off the machines, the vote tallies and all that, the ballots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, they were doing the same thing in Pennsylvania under Steal the Vote, Josh Shapiro and his cronies in the Pennsylvania state government. Folks in Pennsylvania, are you going to wake up? I mean, what is wrong with you? I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. Do you want a fair and honest election? It is what it is when it's done. Right now, we don't have any of that. It's not fair or honest for anyone. It's not fair or honest to the Republic, the Constitution, the founders, and to all us Americans. Get it together. Get rid of these people who insist on using machines and obfuscate in every way they can, kind of like the Secret Service and the FBI on these investigations, getting you the information so that you can determine if elections are fair, free, open, honest, and legal. This isn't hard. You're just making it hard on purpose. You're more concerned with power than the Republic. And you're more concerned with ideology than freedom. And you lecture the right side on a threat to democracy. Wow, unbelievable. In any event, folks, get in touch with your elected representatives at the state level, at the county clerk level, and at the governor's level. Get this fixed. We got 90 days to try and get some kind of Band-Aid on this pig, which the Democrats, the cheaters, the fraudsters, and those folks filled with treason try and put lipstick on the pig of election fraud. Well, the lipstick has been ripped off here over the last month. Make sure you read that stuff. Make sure you get involved. In the meantime, keep the wind at your back. We'll talk to you next week.
Please remember, if you've missed any shows, just click on Show Archive and you'll find all of his shows. We look forward to seeing you here again next week for another episode of Read Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side.